This last shorter section it will be on the class of amphibian or amphibia. Amphibia are defined as those organisms that can live, quote, anywhere, thus the name amphibia. They can live both on land and in the water. And they list here are the characteristics, the 6 characteristics that separate amphibia from, or are part of the things that define amphibia. First of all, they have a bony endoskeleton. So, unlike fish, where some fish are cartilaginous and other fish are bony, these are all bony. All the various types of amphibia have bony endoskeleton. They have a smooth skin. The smooth skin contains both capillaries and pigment, and no scales. So there are no scales like that are seen on a lot of bony fish. The smooth skin is an area of respiration for amphibia, and that's why there are capillaries in the skin. The pigments act for 2 purposes. One is for camouflage, and the other is as a defense mechanism. Many of the pigments that are produced are also poisonous. They have 2 pairs of limbs, thus 4 limbs, and these have, in most cases, webbed feet, but not in all cases. They have as many as 4 organs for respiration. So in addition, they can have gills, they can have lungs, they can respire through their skin. They have various other ways of respiring. They have a 3-chambered heart, which we will go over in some detail. And like the fish, they are oviparous. So they lay their eggs, and the young are then hatched outside the body. Now this shows the life cycle of a typical amphibian, and also shows the external anatomy of a specific amphibian, or a typical amphibian. And over here we have the life cycle, which starts with a tadpole, and the tadpole is the larval form of the amphibian, in this case the frog. Here you have a mass of eggs that hatch to give tadpoles. Now tadpoles are obligate water dwellers, that is, they only have gills. Therefore, they have to be in the water at all times in order to survive. And as they develop or go through metamorphosis, and in a sense theirs is a complete metamorphosis, because the larval stage is very different than the adult stage. The tadpole begins to grow legs, and then at some point it looks more like a frog than it does like a tadpole, and then all through here it's developing lungs, so that it can come out of the water and onto the land. And here's the adult. Now the adult is generally characterized by large eyes, a fairly large ear area with a tympanic membrane, large legs in the back for jumping, with small legs in the front. Now most amphibians go through a process known as hibernation. Hibernation is a state of extremely slow metabolism, where the organism lowers its body temperature, lowers its respiratory rate, and goes into a state of rest or sleep. And this usually occurs in times of significant adverse weather and adverse environment, and it allows the organism to survive and then come out and reproduce during a better time in a better environment. Now here's the heart of the average amphibian, and the heart contains 3 chambers, and the fundamental difference in the heart is the presence of the 2 atria. You have a left atria, which is also sometimes called auricle, and the right atria here. Now remember, veins take blood into the heart, so these are coming from the lungs, pulmonary veins from the lungs into the left auricle or left atrium. So this is oxygenated blood. It is then pumped into the ventricle. This receives blood from the body through these veins, and also from the sinus venosus. And this is also dumped into the ventricle. So both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood are dumped into the ventricle, which is then pumped out into the body. So the left atrium receives oxygen-rich blood from the lungs, and from the skin. The pulmonary veins, though they're called veins because they carry blood into the heart, have oxygenated blood. The sinus venosus receives oxygen-poor blood from the body and pumps it into the right atrium. And then that is then pumped into the ventricle as well. Now here shows what happens after it comes out of the heart. And that's what I want to show here. So you have blood that comes into the left atrium from the pulmonary circulation, and then into the right atrium from the sinus venosus, and also from these veins from the body. Then these are both pumped into the single ventricle. This comes up into the right atrium from the body below here. It pumps together into the right side. It comes out the ventricle, and then it divides into two branches. Okay, so when it comes out through what's called the conus arteriosus, which is a single vessel that comes out of the ventricle. Then it divides into two truncus arteriosus, and one trunk goes to the lungs to get more oxygen. The other trunk goes to the body to deliver oxygenated blood. So let me go through that again. You start out with blood from the lungs coming in the left side and pumped into the ventricle from the left atrium. Blood from the circulation, which comes from the body into the sinus venosus, from the body above into the sinus venosus, and all of that goes into the right atrium from the sinus venosus. This is then also pumped into the ventricle. This together is then pumped out through the conus arteriosus, which divides into the truncus arteriosus, one of which goes to the body, one of which goes to the lungs. Now once you come out of the body, there's an arch called the carotid arch, which feeds the head, and then it goes down this way. The aortic arch continues on after the carotid arch and carries blood, oxygenated blood, to the rest of the body. And that is the circulation of the frog.